Welcome to Obi-Wan Studios. For today's video, I'm going to be comparing the two most recent MTT sets from LEGO Star Wars, or the two modern downscaled versions of the MTT. We have the 2014 75058 MTT based on Episode 1 against the all-new 2025 75435 Battle of Felucia Separatist MTT, of course, based on the Clone Wars. I am really excited to make this comparison video for you guys, so let's get into some quick information about both of these sets first. The 75058 MTT released in the summer of 2014 for $90, which today is about $122 adjusted for inflation, and it retired at the end of 2015. Today, this set sealed is about $400 on the collector's market according to Brick Economy, which is pretty insane. It comes with 954 pieces and 12 total minifigures, which we're going to get into during the comparison. And then we have the 75435 Battle of Felucia Separatist MTT, which released on August 1st, 2025 for $160. And don't worry, we will be talking about the roughly $40 price increase at retail value between these two sets. The set comes with 976 pieces and 12 total minifigs as well. So the same number between the two sets, but a vastly different selection of minifigs to join, of course, all of our battle droids for these two MTTs. And to make sure this comparison is as fair as possible, there are a few different categories that I will be using to score the sets against each other and to also just guide the comparison along. We will compare the minifigures in each set, then we will turn to the builds and look at them in terms of their design and accuracy to the source material, which I kind of see as being one and the same sort of thing. Then the play features of each set, as both of these are play scale sets. Then we'll look at the value for your money at that retail price, but then also just discuss the collector's value of this MTT from 2014 sealed today in this case. Lastly, then what I kind of call my opinion on these sets will be scored as well, and that kind of takes into account just the general coolness factor and what the LEGO Star Wars community has really been wanting from these sets. Kind of things like that will be that kind of opinionated scoring at the very end for last. So let's dive into this comparison now, starting off with the minifigures first. Starting off with the 2014 MTT's minifigs first, we have Obi-Wan Kenobi, Qui-Gon Jinn, a Naboo security guard, a pilot battle droid, 6 B-1 battle droids with 1 straight arm to hold the blaster rifle and to go inside the troop deployment rack of the MTT, and then 1 B-1 battle droid with 2 angled arms to fly the STAP around, so 7 in total, and then a PK-4 droid. The minifig selection for this MTT is fine. It's not super exciting though. You think of an episode 1 set, based on the Battle of Naboo. Some Gungan warriors would have been really cool to have some accurate opposition in the set, but we just kind of get Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn. It feels a little bit like throw-ins into this set just to include some Jedi in it for the sake of including Jedi within a set. Now, both Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon Jinn have some printing issues where the skin tone on the torso underneath the Jedi robes is pretty off, and then Qui-Gon's legs are more gray rather than that light tan color to match the rest of his Jedi robes. LEGO just cannot print light on darker pieces, and this is always the result. It looks rather bad to me. So both of these two minifigs, while they are nice if you're coming from that perspective of getting some Jedi within the set, Qui-Gon also being exclusive to this one, the printing on them isn't totally perfect, so a couple of issues, but then otherwise the minifigs are totally fine. The Naboo security officer, I do really like. The hat for him looks really sharp with the gold accents, and that brown and yellow color scheme is also very striking. It stands out a lot, and it's not a minifig that you get terribly often as well. It was only included in one other set. My specific example's leg print is a little weak as well. I don't believe they all were like this, but just mine didn't have the best in terms of the actual print quality either, so a slight knock on my exact example of this set. And then we have the pilot battle droid, which looks fine. There's nothing really wrong with it, but it's just not the newest, latest, and greatest version of the pilot battle droid, so this design has aged a little bit more now at the time of me making this comparison. And then we have our 7 B-1 battle droids, which 6 to go in the Trade Federation troop carrier is, I think, the lowest amount anyone would ever accept for an MTT set. And then it's just nice to get an additional one for these STAPs, so that you can kind of have the STAP flying around separately from the fully loaded promoted MTT's troop carrier. Lastly, we have the PK-4 droid, which you can see in episode 1 both on the Looser Hulk at the beginning of the movie and then during the Battle of Naboo, kind of cleaning up and repairing the battle droids that are scattered across the entire battle. That's just an addition that seems out of left field, but kind of cool as it's an exclusive droid build to this set. It feels a little plain to me though. I really wish there was some sort of print that we got for some extra detail for the PK-4 droid, but otherwise just a cool addition that no one would have expected. Turning to the 2025 MTT's minifigs, we have Aayla Secura, Commander Bly, a pilot battle droid, 6 B1 battle droids, and 3 commando droids. On paper, at least, and in theory, I personally think the lineup from the 2025 MTT absolutely crushes the one from 2014. It's just so much cooler getting Commander Bly, Aayla Secura, some commando droids as well in addition to the MTT. I personally like that lineup a lot more. However, the actual execution and the end result of the minifigs in this set really let that lineup down because there is a lot of inaccuracies with the minifigs from this set. Our lone Jedi, Aayla Secura, is pretty good overall. The only weird thing about her design is that LEGO changed her lip color from pink in previous versions, which was accurate, to this lighter shade and just made it more inaccurate to her character. It's just weird. I don't totally get it, but otherwise I do really like her design quite a lot. Then we have Commander Bly, and if you want to hear me rant about how bad Bly is, just go and watch the review that I did on the 2025 MTT. There are so many inaccuracies with Commander Bly. He just is terrible, in all honesty. At this point, it's like, why bother including Commander Bly if you can't get a lot of these color details right? It's just literally passing being able to do paint by numbers, at least in my opinion. So Commander Bly is just bad. I'm not going to get into it in this comparison though, just so much wrong with them. Then we have our pilot battle droid, which is the all new version from 2024 and really is utter perfection for a pilot battle droid. We have our 6 regular B1 battle droids to go inside of this MTT, which is totally fine, and then our 3 commando droids. Now the community and even me in my review on this set talked about how the commando droids in universe are brown, and brown isn't the best word to describe the color that they actually are. It's like a warmer taupe shade. It's not dark gray by any means. There are a lot of warmer undertones to it of like purple, red, and brown in different lighting colors that make it just not a true gray. And the old brown color, I think, just did a better job of representing the fact that they weren't just totally gray. They had a bit of a unique color to the commando droids. It helped to set their design apart. So for me personally, this color change to this darker gray, I personally am not a big fan of, but the actual mold for the commando droid's head looks great, and the printing detail as well was very well done. But for me personally, I just would have preferred the old color scheme because in my mind, it was just a little bit better at representing the true color of the commando droids. Alright, now I'm going to walk you guys through my thought process in deciding which of these sets has the better minifigs. The 6 B1 battle droids that go within the troop deployment rack of each of the MTTs are a total wash, so we can remove those from the equation. Then we have the pilot battle droids, and the newer MTT has that updated version of the pilot battle droid, so there is a slight edge there when comparing directly the 2 pilot battle droids. So then we are really left with comparing Aayla Secura, Commander Bly, and the 3 commando droids against Obi-Wan Kenobi, Qui-Gon Jinn, the Naboo security guard, an extra B1 battle droid, and the PK-4 droid. And this lineup of minifigs in the 2025 version should easily take it, but the minifigs out of the newer MTT were just so poorly done. There was too much wrong with them where I don't have the heart to give the point to this set, mainly really just because of Commander Bly. If Bly was better, I would probably give the point to the 2025 MTT, but because its minifigs are worse in their design and accuracy to the source material, I just can't give the point to this one. So the point is going to the 2014 MTT, not because its minifigs are better necessarily, but because they're less worse. Alright, now we can talk about our builds in terms of their overall design and accuracy to the source material. And naturally, when discussing the builds, there will be a little bit of spillover between those 2 different categories, but I will do my best to keep it as separate as possible. Now, both of these sets come with a stat build, so we can take a look at both of those together and compare them directly. The best way to describe the 2014 STAP, in my opinion, is quirky. It looks a little weird. Maybe it's the fins on the bottom done in black that just don't look that great to me. If they were brown, I think it would look a lot better. And it's a little bit bulky and just disproportionate to the more modern STAP design. It's not bad by any means, but it's just nowhere near as good and I think accurate looking as like the newer STAPs like we have in the 2025 version. Of course, this one done in the Separatist colorways to match the Separatist MTT. I just like this STAP a lot more, and it's also raised higher up on the clear pieces as well, so it gives more of that illusion that it's flying along during battle. The only really knock against the new STAP design is that the laser cannons on the front are a little smaller than we're used to, but that's so that it can actually fit better in the new MTT. But when we're just comparing the STAPs directly, I do like the modern version a lot better. Turning to the MTTs, and we obviously have two different aesthetics going on here. The brown of the Trade Federation Army as seen in episode 1, and then the loud blue and gray color scheme of the Separatist Alliance from the Clone Wars. In just the color schemes, I think the Clone Wars Separatist style is just so much cooler and more unique. And while both of these builds are considered to be the downscaled version of an MTT, the 2025 one is slightly smaller than the 2014 version, mainly in the length and height. It is noticeable, but it is just a tad wider than the 2014 MTT due to the sloping of the back section, which does look pretty great. So in general, it's not a huge shrink from the 2014 version, but just worth noting that in general, this MTT is a little smaller. Now, in my time owning and displaying the 2014 MTT, I always thought its exterior didn't look that bad at all, but it has aged a lot more now that we have this new version in 2025. There's a lot of gaps that the 2014 model has, even with the exposed Technic skeleton near the bottom that just look a lot worse next to the 2025 MTT, which is pretty seamless in terms of that exterior design. It all looks like one big armored piece for the most part. It has a few gaps, but those are certainly more than reasonable. It's just a lot more refined in that design, where the 2014 one, now, okay, it looks a touch unfinished almost, especially in that bottom kind of front half section. Now, the episode 1 MTT does have some details that are a little bit more accurate than the Separatist version in my opinion. The forward twin laser cannons on the 2014 version look a lot better and way more proportionate than they do on the Separatist version. They're just more stubby and disproportionate to the build. That's the one thing with the 2025's exterior that just really stands out to me as looking a little off. The side profile of the 2014 MTT, I think, really does a good job in actually showcasing that it does jut out a little bit more and away from the body. Plus, it adds some extra interior spacing to this build, where the 2025 version, it's a lot more sloped and less noticeable. You can kind of see how they tried to represent that in this build, but in terms of accuracy's sake, I almost think it's better done on the 2014 version, or maybe some sort of middle ground between the two. But the fact that you get more interior space because of the 2014's design, I do think that is a little bit better. On the left side of the 2014 MTT, we have the mechanism for deploying the troop rack, and it definitely sticks out a bit and leaves a lot of gaps in this area. It just doesn't help this MTT look any better or more refined. But speaking of refined, the mechanism for the Separatist 2025 MTT is just fantastic. It's incorporated rather seamlessly into the design because in the Clone Wars you actually see these cylinders on the back of the MTT in this exact section, and I believe I'm the only person on YouTube who's actually pointed that detail out. Whether or not it was intended by the LEGO design team, I just can't help but see the resemblance between the show and what we actually get. Maybe just having another cylinder on the other side to balance it out might have actually looked a little better. Now, while both MTTs have the respective and accurate color schemes based on the different source material, you just have to acknowledge the effort that was put into making the Clone Wars version look as good as it does. You have a fantastic printed piece for the deployment hatch, stickers for the primary sensors on top, and then the Separatist logos on the sides. That just adds so much detail to the build, although the color matching with these stickers was not done that brilliantly. But then the rest of the color scheme for the MTT is just built right into the vehicle's design, and it just looks so amazing in my opinion, where the brown of the Trade Federation, it's just a bit boring. You do have some sticker detailing as well, but it just doesn't stick out at you nowhere near as much as it does with the Separatist one. Now, while the 2025 MTT does a great job of reducing the amount of gaps and kind of awkward spaces that the previous version had, the 2014 MTT I think did a better job of making the troop deployment rack hatch area look a lot more solid than the new version, because with the 2014 MTT, you can't really see inside of that interior space that houses the troop deployment rack, but on the new version, you can actually look in and see some of the battle droids in there. So a little bit of awkward spacing at the front of the new MTT compared to the old version. That's just the one area that really stands out to me as being, I think it's partially just due to the scale of the new version as well. It's a little bit smaller, a little bit tighter as well, so completely hiding all of the gaps I just don't think was as possible as it was on the slightly bigger 2014 model, but that's just one downside of downsizing. So for the category of overall design and accuracy to the source material, I just have to give the point to the 2025 Separatist MTT. The sheer amount of effort that was put into making this build look so good. How can you not give it that point? It's truly stunning looking. I really do love how this build looks. Okay, so now we can move on to the play features, and we are going to start off at the very top of the MTTs with their control rooms. On the 2014 version, the side panels on either side can move up and away from the build, and then you have access to the control room. It is a bit tight in there though. There's not a lot of space to get your fingers in there to place the battle droid pilot in, and the designers thought of this and actually made the plate for the control room base able to slide out and away from the build. You do have to open up the hatches that house the spring-loaded shooters to actually pull the control room out of the MTT, but then you can place your battle droid pilot on, and it just provides a little bit of extra play feature in having it be able to be moved out, and you can kind of have some battle droids in there, pretend whatever a kid would want to do, right? You have a little lever and light as well for some controls. It's just a good system and just makes it a lot easier to place your battle droid pilot inside of the 2014 MTT. Moving to the 2025 MTT, the system is a little bit different. The entire top section with the primary sensor eyes of the MTT lifts up, and then the side panels move away from the build, and then you have a ton of room to actually place your battle droid pilot inside there. And funny enough, for the first time ever, I was actually able to keep the battle droid pilot more upright when placing the top of the control room back on the 2025 MTT, instead of it just getting knocked over, put on its side, or having just to lay it back a lot more in order to fit it on. Height is still an issue with the clearance of this interior portion of this MTT, but kind of nice to know that if you position it just right, you can actually have that battle droid pilot sat a lot more upright. There is a really great looking stickered control panel inside of this control room, and then a place to store the blaster rifle for the battle droid pilot. When it comes to additional weaponry, both of our MTTs have interactive weapons that the user can use. For the 2014 version, you have spring-loaded shooters that are hidden right in the sides of the build, and you have this compartment that you can open up and then fire off the spring-loaded shooters. It's so cool. It's like missiles extending out of the build, and then when you tuck them back in, you don't even know that they are there, and it makes the 2014 version just look completely seamless and not like it has any additional play features because it is a play skill set. In contrast, the 2025 MTT has two stud shooters right on the sides of the exterior of the build. They don't look terribly noticeable, but the system is nowhere near as cool as it is on the 2014 version. Plus, spring-loaded shooters I think are just more fun for kids than kind of more lame stud shooters. So that system is way better on the 2014 MTT. Okay, so now we can move on to the party pieces of our MTTs, how you deploy the troop deployment rack. For the 2014 MTT, you have a side mechanism that you just rotate to extend out that troop deployment rack. You do have to lift up that forward hatch all the way up just to get a little bit more room and clearance. And then when you retract it, you have to manually close both of the hatches. But the 2025 system is so amazing, it's so cool, and it's just extremely extremely satisfying to how the whole system deploys. The knob on the top of the MTT at the back that I mentioned in the design and accuracy section, you just rotate so that the hatches open up, the deployment rack extends out, and then actually goes downwards, which is accurate to the movement of it in episode 1. And then when you want to retract the troop deployment rack, both hatches will automatically close for you. It is such a fun system. It is really, really brilliantly designed. And when it comes to the actual troop deployment rack, both builds can hold 6 battle droids. So even though we have a slightly tinier MTT in 2025, you still can fit the same number of battle droids in it, which is a good thing because you wouldn't want to go any less than the 6 that the previous version had. However, the actual design of the deployment rack system for each MTT could not be any more different. When it comes to the actual troop deployment rack, the 2014 version looks really great and super accurate to what we see in episode 1. It really looks great. And since we never see the MTT in the Clone Wars deploying the rack system, we have to assume that what we see in episode 1 is still accurate to the Clone Wars, that design and universe didn't actually change. And the 2025 troop deployment rack, let's be honest, it does not look that great at all. So I did consider this part as well when I was talking about the design and overall accuracy of the builds, but I just wanted to save it for one large discussion at this point, talking about the deployment rack system. So the actual aesthetic for the Trade Federation MTT is just a lot better. The 2014's troop deployment rack is a lot easier to use, as well as the entire plate piece that the battle droids stand on is completely detachable, so you have just such an easy time placing them on and off of it and then storing them back on the deployment rack and placing everything back inside the MTT, where for the 2025 one, you don't really have a lot of space. I found that just manually lifting the entire rack system back up gives you the most space to actually place and tuck the battle droids back on to that deployment rack. But it's definitely nowhere near as easy, and just the general user experience for this part of the build is way better on the previous version. And I think that also is in part too, just again, the downsizing, just the slight shrinkage of the new MTT did affect the actual spacing of the deployment rack as well. So it's just another example of how even just a tiny downsize can actually make a pretty massive difference to the build's design and what they actually are able to do. So when it comes to actually saying which MTT has the better troop deployment system, it's a little bit harder to actually say, because while the new version greatly improves on the actual deployment and retraction of the entire thing, the ease of use with the more spacious version for the 2014 troop deployment rack and the general aesthetic is much better. So you kind of have pros and cons of each. And then when it comes to additional interior details, both of these builds do have some at the back of the MTT, but the 2014 version has just a little bit more going on. On the back of the MTT, we have these hatches on either side that can open up and have these plates that slide out. One is weapon storage for all of the battle droids, and then the other side can house the PK4 droids tools. So you get a little bit of additional play there with the weapons rack, and then this little kind of, it's not quite a vehicle, but it's just a place you can even place the PK4 droid on and then store them in the back of this MTT. And in contrast with the 2025 version, the entire back side panels do lift up in a way so you can access the back interior along with the top spine section as well. It actually lifts up all as one piece and pulls away from the build, but you don't really have any space to actually place your battle droids in here at all. The weapon storage is actually done right on the frame of the MTT. You don't get a weapons rack or anything. It's as bare bones as it can get. So in terms of just those additional interior spacing and details, the 2014 one has just a lot more going on and it is a lot better. And both of our MTT builds can store their respective staps inside of them. For 2014, you simply rotate upwards the top kind of back end section of the build, and then the stap slides in facing upwards, and then you rotate it all back down, close it up, and then the stap is upside down hanging in the MTT, but it is stored away and out of sight. But one quirk of this design is that it's not really held very securely in place, and because there is a bit of room at the back of the MTT, if you shake it around or really move it around, the stap can slide off and then you have to just reach in and actually pull it out. So it's a bit of a flawed system, but it works okay. In contrast to the 2014's attempt at a clever system to store the STAP, the 2025's version, you just literally place the STAP in the back of the build, and that does take up the vast majority of any space you might have to place some droids inside of the back. But then just because it's kind of tucked in there against some of the pieces, it really won't move around. Also because there's just no room for it to move around too. It's a little tight to place it in there, but you do have enough space to get the job done. And the last part of the play feature category is how both of the MTTs are sat on wheels so they can move around, and in function they honestly both work the same. They're on wheels, they both function as you would want them to. The one point I will make though is for the 2014 version, because of those gaps near the bottom of the build, you can kind of see the wheels actually moving from the outside, whereas on the 2025 version they're completely hidden and it really does look like it's moving on its repulsors. So when it comes to scoring the play features of the builds, the point is going to the 2014 MTT because you just get more to interact with this build, and it's really in part thanks to this MTT just being slightly bigger. Just the slight increase in size to the previous version from the new one allows for a lot more to actually be going on. You have deployment racks inside, you have spring-loaded shooters that are hidden into the build, and you just have a better system for actually placing and taking off battle droids in the troop deployment rack. And although the actual system for extending and retracting the troop deployment rack with the 2025 version is essentially perfect for an MTT, it is just not enough on its own to make up for the lack of other detailing and just fun features that the older version does have. So for play, the 2014 one in my mind is better, but that system in 2025, you cannot argue, is so cool and so well done. Moving on to our fourth category, value, and just for a quick refresher, the 2014 MTT retailed for $90, which is approximately $122 today in 2025 adjusted for inflation. The 2025 MTT retails for $160, and I think it's pretty clear from this comparison alone that there is not about $38 worth of extra value out of the 2025 MTT. The quality was not brought nowhere near good enough with like the minifigs, for example, for this set to even be remotely considered to be worth anywhere near that more over this set here. So 2025 loses another point in the value category this time, with the 2014 set being, for 122 bucks, maybe, I think fair at that point. If you got it on a sale for like 110, 100 bucks, you'd be in pretty good shape, compared to the $400 sealed price point about that this set is going for right now. That's, 100 bucks seems like an amazing deal. And our fifth and final category takes into account not only my opinion on these sets, but the context of their release, the coolness factor, some of those intangible things I'm taking now into consideration. And just personally, getting a Clone Wars era Separatist color schemed version of the MTT, I personally think is super cool. When this set goes down in price, I definitely want to pick up a couple more of these in case I ever do a mock or something like that, just because LEGO might not make another Separatist Clone Wars MTT ever. This might be the only official one we ever get, and once it goes down on clearance, 120, ideally a little less than 120, then I definitely think it is worth picking up a few more of these to add to my collection. So just the fact that LEGO did make that leap into giving us another Clone Wars era set that a lot of us, I'm sure, just thought we'd never get, instead of releasing another Trade Federation brown color scheme version based on episode 1, I do genuinely think is really cool, and I want LEGO to do more cool stuff like this, more designs that are a little bit obscure, because you barely see this MTT in the Clone Wars. You even see the brown version in episode 3 at the end of the Clone Wars. You don't even get to see this color scheme version of it. But I just think that is cool, and it's really unique and interesting, and it's something different. I want them to execute things like the minifigs better, but in general, if you take out the minifigs, you take out the price point of the set, and just consider for what you get for a small MTT, it's so great. I just genuinely think it is so cool. So that is why for this fifth and final category, I just want to award a point to this MTT for everything that I had just mentioned. It's really cool. I genuinely really do love the build, and I'm gonna love having it on display next to the 2014 version or on a shelf dedicated to the Clone Wars on its own. I'm still not exactly sure what I'm going to do. If you have some suggestions, just let me know in the comments down below. So, with a final score of 3-2, the 2014 75058 MTT is the winner of our comparison today. And I hope you guys can understand all of the points that I made in this comparison to come to that conclusion. I do, though, really just genuinely love this Clone Wars MTT so much. And if I could only keep one set, I would still keep this one, but that is why it was so important to have an actual scoring system to make sure I wasn't being biased against this one, because I just love this build and think it is so cool. And I will concede that back in 2014, 11 years ago, LEGO could make a better overall MTT set. Not necessarily a better MTT, obviously, but a better MTT set. And that is just kind of sad to come to that conclusion and just that result at the end of this comparison. And this video, I think, just serves as a really good example of how when LEGO downsizes these playscale sets, condenses them a little bit more, even though they refine the details and the overall aesthetic of these sets sometimes, you do lose a lot in terms of the functionality, the actual features that the sets have. That's pretty clear between these two MTTs. A little bit smaller, and look at now how much more condensed the actual troop deployment rack is on the 2025 version versus the 2014 version. It's things like that that we lose. The minifigs, there's more wrong with the 2025 ones than there were with these ones in a set that was released 11 years ago. That, definitely in my opinion, is a bit sad to say. I really hope you guys enjoyed this comparison that I made today. It was really fun to genuinely make and actually analyze both of these sets in a lot of detail together. Just the two most recent modern versions of the MTT. And as always, let me know what you guys think of both of these sets in the comments down below. How would you score things based on this criteria that was used in this comparison? Which set do you like better? I always love hearing what you guys think down below in the comments. And if you guys want to see any more set comparison, minifig comparisons in this style, let me know down in the comments below, because that helps to guide what videos I do make. Now, my only challenge is just to sort out how I'm going to display both of these sets. So thanks again so much for watching, you guys. Hope you really enjoyed this comparison. As always, my name is Justin, and I will see you guys on the next LEGO Star Wars video on Obi-Wan Studios.